and welcome back to my channel. In my previous video I introduced COUNTIF and COUNTIFs formulas, which enabled us to count how many times a given value appears in a list based on one or multiple criteria. In this episode I would like to introduce another aggregation formula which would allow you to achieve the effect you can see in cell F4. I'm going to start with a simple introduction as usually and then go back to the stock market to do some simple analysis. Looking at this table, in the first episode we asked the question what is the value for Croatia, and we established that it's impossible to answer without more details. In the second episode we looked at how many times does Croatia appear in this table. In this episode we're going to answer the question what is the total value for Croatia. Let's use the SUMIF formula to tell us that. I'm going to start with modifying the table slightly so I can better demonstrate the formula behavior. Just going to Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V now, and let's change this value to, for example, 10. If I click on cell F4 and then go to Formulas, Math and Trigonometry, and if I scroll all the way down to S, Excel is going to bring the formula wizard for SUMIF formula. First it's asking for a range. Let's select the entire column B, which is a country in this case. Now in my case criteria will be Croatia, which I could type it in quotation marks or take advantage of the fact that I have this value in cell E4. And the sum range is going to be the value column from my small table. If I click enter, you're going to see that Excel summed up those two values. If I now change it to Hungary, it's going to tell me that this is 40, which is the collective value for Hungary in my small table. SUMIF worked great with the previous table where we only had one criteria column. However, in here we need at least two criteria to determine our value. Let's use SUMIFs formula to get the answer of what is the value of Croatia in Zagreb. Going to go once again to Formulas, Math and Trigonometry, and if I scroll down to S, this time I'll choose SUMIFs. First it will ask me where is the sum range located, which in my case is the entire value column. Then criteria range 1, which in my case is going to be the entire country column. And criteria 1 in my case is going to be cell F26. When I click that, it will automatically add one more range, one more criteria range. If I select the arrow, once again, this is going to be the entire city column. And for the criteria, this will be cell G26, which at the moment is Zagreb. As you can see, it's not giving me option for more values. However, if I press the tab key, it would allow me to select criteria range 3, criteria 3, and so on. I will hit OK because all we need is two columns. So let's see what the formula does. Now as you can see, it correctly evaluated the value of 20, which is the value corresponding to Zagreb in Croatia. I can change that to Makarska to show you that it does work. I could also say Hungary. Now in this case it's 0 because there is no value for Hungary and Makarska. Change it to Budapest. And we have the value of 30. Without spending much time, let me tweak this formula a little to show you one trick. I will, instead of G26, I will manually override this part of the formula with double quotes and then does not equal to, let's say, Budapest. And if I hit enter, as you can see, it's going to give me the value for Hungary in Debrecen. Let's change it to see how it works. What that simply does is that now it's looking for all the values that do not equal to Budapest. So just wanted to stress out that this formula can also be used with does not equal to condition. Now, similar to my previous videos, let's try to apply this knowledge in practice. I'm going to open a UK stock market website, and from here I'll click on Statistics, View all companies and securities, and then download the Excel file. I'm going to click on Enable Editing to make sure I can modify this file. Without spending too much time on what each column means, let's quickly have a look at the little problem I spotted when I opened the file. If I go to column J and zoom in a little, you can see that each of the cells for the market capitalization has this small little green triangle in the top left corner. Now if I hover over the exclamation mark and expand the drop-down list, it's telling me that there is a number stored as text. Now this is a very common problem when you export data from different sources because the formatting might not match what Excel expects. Luckily the solution is very simple. I'm going to select the entire column. I could either hold my mouse key and drag it all down, or select the first cell, press Ctrl, Shift and down. And as you can see, I still have this exclamation mark symbol. If I click on that and say convert to number, Excel will fix the problem for me. Now let's prepare a simple analysis of what is the total market capitalization of all companies belonging to a given ICB industry. In order to achieve this, I'm going to need a unique set of values for the ICB industry. There are a couple of ways to achieve it, however, I'm just going to use the simplest for the demonstration purposes of this video. In order to get unique values, I first need to select all the values. I could do it using my shortcut key, however this time if I press Ctrl Shift down, you will see that it will only get me to the nearest break, because some companies do not have a industry. If I hold Ctrl Shift and down again and again, it goes farther. However, it will take a while to keep pressing down arrow, although this is of course possible. So let me show you a small tricks when you have situations like that, how to select the entire range. Now I know that my values are stored in column D, however I also know that column B has no blank spaces. So if I go to column B and then hold only Control without Shift and arrow down, it will take me all the way down to the range. I can go to cell D 2000 to 2112, and if I select that, I can now use the scroll bar to go all the way down, all the way up, press Shift and press within cell D7. That will allow me to select the entire column. With the entire column selected, I can press Ctrl C, which means I'm copying this data, and go somewhere to the right, maybe in column M. I will right click within the cell and say paste values only. The last step will be to go to data, data tools and remove duplicates. Now let's get rid of those to make the file look nicer visually. I'm going to click on any empty cell and then go to Format Painter, select entire column M, and just like that we have those removed. Let me add a heading here, call it ICB sector, and a column next to that we're going to call total market capitalization. Now watch what happens if I try to populate this column using SUMIF formula. If I start typing SUMIF, I'm going to be asked for the range. If I go to column D and select entire column D, Excel will try to select the entire table. The problem is that one of the top cells is merged, and we could unmerge it. However, since we opened the formula dialog, I think the easier way would be to simply type in manually D, column D, which would make sure we select entire D column. Now the second argument, not really visible right now, is the criteria. In our case, we generated the criteria range in column M, so I'll click on cell M7. And for the sum range, we're going to select column J. If I close the bracket and drag it down, we're going to see values for each sector, or I believe the correct name is industry. Now let me show you a quick way to check if the formula is working correctly. I'm going to select entire column here and then press Ctrl Shift 1 to format numbers as numbers so we can read them better. And let's maybe choose one of the top sectors or industries, let's say financials. If I copy this number, paste them maybe here so we can have the value. Once again, applying formatting. If I now go to column D, right click on financials and say filter, and filter by selected cell's value, Excel will filter the entire table to only keep financials. So if I go to column J now and select entire column, we can see this sum value here. If I scroll up, as you can see, this sum corresponds to what our formula evaluated. Let's unfilter that so we can use it in the next example. Now that we have this data, we can perform a simple analysis. Let's once again add a little bit of format to the picture, maybe an underline here. Then let's make it stand out. And for the data itself, I'm going to right click and say sort largest to smallest. And this way we can see that the biggest, it's not a sector. Let me change the name to a correct one. This is actually industry. Apologies for that. ICB industry. That the biggest ICB industry is industrials. Let's jump into the next example. Now let's imagine we want this information with addition of market value. That means that our sum will depend on two conditions, ICB industry and the market. In order to organize unique values for the market, we're going to take the same steps we took for the last ICB industry example. So I'll copy the entire column H, paste it maybe in column R, and once again go to data and remove duplicates. I click OK to that. We get unique values for our range. Once again, I'm going to get rid of the formats. So if I go home, apply entire formats. And even though the text doesn't look nice now, I will show you that it doesn't really matter because we are going to be copying it anyway. So if I select the entire populated range here, click Ctrl C or right click to say copy. If I now right click in an empty cell, I can go to paste special menu. And there are two things we're going to do. First of all, I just want to paste values. It's not important so much here, however, just to show you that it does exist. And I also want to tick the transpose tick box. If I click OK, what Excel will do is it will convert this range to a horizontal one. Now that I have that, I can get rid of my unique values. For the rows, I'm simply going to steal what we've done in the previous example. So if I select the entire range here and then Ctrl C, Ctrl V, let's keep consistent with the formatting. So if I click Format Painter and do the same for all of them. And now we have our base to populate the data. Let's use SUMIFs formula to populate the values. To do that, let me first get rid of this column because there will be no value for market, as market is just the heading of one of the columns in my main table. To do that, I'll right click on this cell and press delete. And from the options given, I will just say shift cells to the left, which means we are simply moving the whole range this direction. Now, so far the autofill feature of Excel was our friend. However, this time if I try to simply drag this formula down and drag it to the side, I'm gonna run into trouble, and I'll explain why now. See, what Excel is doing is it's trying to help you save some time. It assumes that since you are moving the formula, the criteria will move as well. So if I check the formula in this cell by pressing F2, I can see that it's looking at column H and column J. Now if I go one cell to the right and do the same, F2, you can see that those columns shifted once. If I go to the third one, this is again shifted once. Now in some cases we want Excel to do that, in others we don't. Now let's have a look at our formula, keeping in mind that we're planning to move it to the side as well as down. If I click within the formula, let's check which values we want to change and which ones we don't. Column J will always be market capitalization, regardless to the position of the formula. So if I click F4, Excel will convert it to absolute reference. Absolute reference is a big topic relevant for another video. However, for now, if you can remember that you can achieve this by pressing F4, that's sufficient. Now, column D, which is our criteria range 1, once again will always stay the same regardless of the formula position. So I will once again click F4. In this case, the M26 cell is our row value for ICB industry. Now this one, we want Excel to move down. However, we don't want to move it to the side. To achieve that, we need to press F4 couple of times. If I press it once, Excel will make it absolute reference. If I press it one more time, it's going to say keep row 26, allow formula to be moved to the right. If I press it one last time, this is the combination we're looking for. Column H once again will never change, so F4 to that. And N25 is the exact opposite of M26, so if I press F4 3 times and hit enter now, we should have a formula that we can drag down and to the side. Let's try doing that. As well as down. And as you can see, we get all the values we're looking for. Now let's check out what happens to the formula now. If you look at cell M26, in this cell, this is M26. If I go one cell down, it changes to M27. However, if I go cell to the right, it still stays as M, it doesn't change to N. If I go one more, it will always be M. Similarly, column N25. See, it's N25 here. If I go one step down, it's still going to be 25. However, if I go to the column to the right, it's going to change to O. Now let's quickly validate if what we've done actually makes sense. One thing I immediately notice is that this cell looks like it's taking a couple more columns. However, in reality, this is just a big formula, so we can get rid of the zeros here. And in order to validate if we're looking at the correct value, we're going to summarize this table. If I click on cell N18, hold Alt and press equals to, Excel will give me a quick sum of those numbers. Now if I do the same here, selecting everything and first applying a format, you can immediately see here that the numbers do match, but let's make it nicer. Let's have a total row. Total, and click on Alt equals to, drag it to the side, and as you can see, we have exact match to what we've seen in the previous one. Now let's finish in style and apply some formatting to establish which combination of ICB industry and market gives us the highest market capitalization. I'll start by making sure that all the column headings fit the width of the column. So if I select all the columns and double click where those two arrows appear at the edge of a column, and let's maybe make it a little bigger. I'll go to this setting and now do a similar trick with the rows. So once again, I'm selecting all the rows here, and then let's pick one, make it a little bigger. If I scroll to the side and a little bit down, we want of course to distinguish the total row, so let's put some border on top of it. We can actually do that by going to more borders, selecting double line and applying it to the top, and we want to make this one bold. I could click Ctrl B or just use B from the home menu. And the last thing I want to do here is to apply some conditional formatting. So if I click on the entire range, go to conditional formatting and then say color scales, as you can see, it by default will create kind of a heat map showing me which value is the highest, meaning green, and which one is the lowest, meaning red. So in our case, it seems that the combination of main market and industrial gives us the highest market capitalization. That's all I planned for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and once again, for those of you who did, thank you very much for watching my previous videos. Now, just a quick note of where I'm going with all this and the nearest plans. I'm hoping to introduce a couple more aggregation formulas in my next video, and that should allow us to get to a point where we will be able to build our first dashboard. If you want to make sure you are notified on upcoming episodes, please hit subscribe and the bell button. Thank you and goodbye.